there has been some stirring about what Joe Biden is going to do about student debt cancellation. There were rumors going around Washington, D.C. that he was prepping to do something big, and we almost did a segment on it, but I thought, you know what? I don't want to be made an asshole again. I don't want to gas people up thinking something big is going to happen when we know the Democrats will always find a way to wiggle out of it. So here's Joe Biden throwing cold water on the idea of significant, no bullshit, broad-based student debt relief.
Mr. President, Majority Leader Schumer said yesterday that you're, quote, getting closer to using executive authority to cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt. Can you confirm that? What exactly are you looking to plan to do here in the coming
You mean my
months?
spokesman said that?
Majority Leader Schumer.
Yeah. Look, number one, first thing we did was reform the system that was in place that didn't work for anybody, that allowed people to write off debt if they engaged in public service. We have almost 1 million.
All right, first of all, I should just interject. That old system he's talking about that didn't work for anybody, that made it impossible to sort of absolve themselves of some of the debt, that's largely his system. That's largely the system that he created with his bankruptcy bill. Yeah.
So he forgets that.
That system that wasn't working for anybody that I created. Right. All that damage that I did, that we kind of somewhat half-assed a sort of like mitigation strategy for. Yeah, that system.
We have a generation of black men in prison, and that system, it's really
it wasn't working.
They're there
really.
for minor
whoever
drug
came up
crimes.
with that,
it's just crazy. It's just crazy. I heard there was a 20 times sentencing disparity for crack than powder cocaine.
And did you know there was a senator at the time who bragged that the crime bill, lynched people for jaywalking? There was a senator who actually bragged about it at that time. I don't know who that was, but we have to undo that damage.
I think it was one of my segregationist friends that I'm so proud of.
Yeah, or maybe it was, me.
785, don't hold me the exact number, I'll get the number. 700 and some thousand have had debt forgiven, their whole debt forgiven because of their working in either as teachers or other means by which they qualify. And we continue to make that easier. Secondly, I am considering dealing with some debt reduction. I am not considering $50,000 debt reduction, but I'm in the process of taking a hard look at whether or not there will be additional debt forgiveness, and I'll have an answer on that in the next couple of weeks.
How high are you?
Okay, so there he is, throwing cold water on the idea of $50,000 per borrower. That, by the way, puts him well to the right of Chuck Schumer, who has been advocating for $50,000 per borrower of student debt reduction. Now, this is just one more example of Democrats putting an idea out there that they're going to try and do something big, letting the Republicans and the right-wing media poison it, and then pulling back and passing a half-assed version of the thing they said they wanted to do, thinking that that will protect them from the potency of the sort of right-wing media. And what ends up happening, they end up getting attacked just as hard anyway, losing the midterms anyway. And the reason why they get their asses kicked at the ballot box anyway, despite, sort of thinking that they're going to avoid the wrath of the right wing if they, let's say, take the public option out of the ACA, right? This is the sort of parallel, is you had Obama say we need a public option, right? Tea Party forms, right-wing media, it's a government takeover of healthcare, blah, 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 blah. They say, okay, fine, no public option. Don't hit us, no public option.
But that had nothing to do with that. That was the insurance companies.
No, but what I'm saying is this is the theory, right? Is that, okay, no public option, fine. What happens? Right wing says this is a government takeover of healthcare anyway. They kick your ass in the midterms anyway. Why? Because you passed a bill that is going to piss off the right without offering any substantial benefit to significant numbers of people who would then be grateful to you for passing the policy. So look, you have an issue like student debt right now. If you forgive $10,000 worth of student debt, that knocks off about 30% of debt. 70% of borrowers still have debt after that. And so what happens is you're going to cancel debt for 12 million people, leaving the other 33 million out there still with not just debt, but debt that is still, gathering interest on top of interest on top of interest. And so what's going to happen is you're going to pass a very, very mild form of student debt relief in which most people are going to be like, well, this was either very little help or no real help at all. Because at past a certain point, it doesn't really even matter what the number is. Because once you get to a point where the interest is just gathering its own interest, then you're never going to pay it off anyway. It doesn't really matter if it's 80,000 or 300,000. Who cares? You're never getting there.
I was talking to somebody today.
If you can't keep up with the interest, you're never paying it off. It doesn't matter what it is.
I was talking to somebody today who got a master's in education at NYU. They owe fucking $250,000, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when are you getting out from under that?
Never, because by the time you pay off $250,000, you're going to owe another $500,000 because of the interest.
Right. You'll never get out from under that.
And so it doesn't really matter.
You'll be paying that for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And you're going to be passing it on to your kids when you die. Okay? And so, what they've done here is they have let the right wing start a culture war over student debt, because what the right wing is saying is that this is a giveaway to the rich, which it's not, because if it was, the right wing would support it. That's how you know it's not a giveaway to the rich. Yeah. They've supported every giveaway to the rich that they could over the last several decades. But they are saying, look, people who went to college and graduated college, on average, earn a lot more than people who don't, which is true. And so why should they have their debt forgiven, which only will then sort of cause them to gain further economic advantage over people without college degrees. Now, of course, that's a very sort of clever way of framing the issue, which ignores the fact that, hey, if rich people were the ones in debt, then there wouldn't be $1.7 trillion worth of debt. You don't get to $1.7 trillion of debt if the rich carry all the debt, because they'd fucking
The rich
pay it
aren't
off.
the ones who need student loans.
Right. They're not the ones who need student loans in the first place. And it wouldn't get to that number if it
makes no sense.
Right, exactly. It's an absurd argument. However, I do think, though, that, there is an argument to be made not to not do student debt. We should cancel all student debt. All of it. Federal, private. The reason you cancel all of it, for me, is very, very simple. As an industry, this student debt profiteering should not exist. There should not be an industry based on selling, which is what you're doing. You're basically selling. It's not really a loan. It's a sale. You're selling a six-figure loan to a teenager, telling them, hey, this is the right thing to do. Sign on the dotted line here if you want a good life.
Right.
And then profiting off of them until they die, burying them in interest.
Which, unless you go in certain very specific fields, especially if you go to a really expensive school, you don't go to a state school, you go to a private school. Like, look at my friend, man. You're never fucking paying off a master's in education from NYU. That shouldn't even exist. It shouldn't exist at that price.
No,
because it's going to be impossible to pay off. You should not be able to rack up a quarter, because I'm assuming if you go get an MFA, it would be the same thing. You should not be able to go get an MFA that's going to get you $250,000 in debt, because chances are if you see more than $40,000 a year, you're very fucking lucky. In pretty much any industry, you'd get an MFA to work in.
Even if you do get more than $40,000 a year, how do you ever get out from under that debt if they're charging you interest on top of it?
Right.
And they can just infinitely accrue that interest. It's impossible. It's totally impossible. But what the right will latch onto is they will say, look, what if some people didn't go to college? Like, what about the person who didn't go to college because they didn't want to bury themselves in debt? Is it fair to them to now cancel all the debt? Now you have a problem here, right? You have a political problem here. So I do think that there should be some discussion about some sort of mortgage relief for non-college grads who own homes, some sort of rent subsidy for non-college grads who rent, right? Make it, sweeten the deal for everybody.
Yeah,
sweeten the deal for everybody.
You know that's not going to happen.
Well, it's not. Well, of course that's not going to happen. This isn't even going to happen. They're not even going to do the substantial student debt relief. And so what are you getting? What are you, I mean, this is what I say.
There's Joe
So-
Biden. We've gone over the figures, and it's $399.99 for every person with a debt.
Please clap.